We're giving our power away when we decide to let other people determine how we feel about ourselves. But by not taking things personally and by having that detached perspective to recognize that whatever they're doing or saying is something that's going on within them and not about us, we're free from having to be offended and have hurt feelings from what that person does or says, which again is a lot easier said than done because we're also trained to feel badly when someone upsets us. From when we were young, of course, when someone calls us a name, it's going to really, really hurt us. But the whole point of this episode is we can feel good about ourselves and we can choose to feel happy and we can choose to let things go by not taking them personally. By recognizing that whatever they're doing or saying, whatever the situation presents, it's not actually about us. Again, no matter how much it seems like it might be about us. Are you feeling a little bit overwhelmed with all the external pressures and expectations that the new year brings? Maybe you're feeling a little bit stuck in your current situation or feeling anxiety about falling behind. The good news is you are not alone. So many others, myself included, are feeling the exact same way. The further good news is therapy can help. A therapist can help you distinguish external pressures from your own internal values. Develop a timeline that feels authentic to you rather than one imposed by society. Process any feelings of inadequacy or comparison and whatever else you might be feeling or experiencing. Whatever challenges this new year might bring up for you, BetterHelp, who is sponsoring today's episode, can help make it easier. BetterHelp is a therapy platform that is entirely online, making it both comfortable and convenient. Simply fill out a questionnaire and you'll be matched with a therapist in as little as a couple of days. And don't worry, you can easily switch therapists at any time if it's not the right fit. Start fresh at any day of the year with BetterHelp by clicking the link in the show notes or go to betterhelp.com/unfulfilled to get 10% off your first month of therapy. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Unfulfilled. I'm your host, Camille. Thank you for tuning into today's solo episode. Today, we're going to talk about why we should not take anything personally. So if you haven't read this book, this is actually the second agreement of the 4 agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz. And I think it's a really powerful one. So I wanted to do an entire episode on it. But before we dive in to an episode I know you should all listen to, please press follow or subscribe wherever you are listening to the podcast. This will give you access to both episodes every single week when they come out and also means so much to me. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for showing up for yourself today, for being a part of this community, and for putting in the work to live a more fulfilling life. So let's dive into the episode. Again, if you haven't read this book, this is the second agreement of the 4 agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz. Highly recommend. It's one of those really powerful self-help books that opens your eyes to a lot of simple yet super powerful nuggets of wisdom. So obviously this is far easier said than done, right? Like, how can we not take anything personally, especially if something feels so directly aimed and attacked at us? Of course, we're going to internalize that. Of course, we're going to be offended and hurt by that. How can we not be? But we're going to get into why and why not taking things personally actually is going to set us free in so many ways. So Don Miguel, the author of this book, he so powerfully yet simply puts, nothing other people do is because of you. It's because of themselves. So just let that soak up for a second. Absolutely nothing that anyone says or does is actually about you, no matter how much it seems like it is. So that's the whole thesis of the episode. So I know you're probably thinking like, okay, that's crazy. Of course, a lot of what other people say or do is about us. Like there's been plenty of instances we can bring to mind where we've been attacked, where people are directly rude to us, where we're in a fight with someone or whatever it may be. There's a lot of things that feel really, really personal and that of course we're going to take personally. But the truth is we don't have to, and we honestly shouldn't. So first reason why we can't take anything personally. The reality is we have no idea what's going on in someone else's head. We truly don't know the internal scars that might be triggered. We don't know what their perspective on the world truly is or on the situation that's at hand. We honestly really don't know what they're thinking and the true why behind their words or actions. We don't know. We simply are not in their heads. And similarly, they don't know ours. And so regardless of how much we communicate, we truly aren't going to fully understand what someone else is thinking and feeling. We don't know their overall view on things, and they don't know our overall view on things. And we have to remember that. So when we take things personally, what we're doing is we're assuming that we know exactly where they're coming from. And we're assuming that whatever they're doing or saying is about us. But what's really going on when someone projects something onto us, when someone makes us feel like something's about us? It's just that. It's them projecting. It's them projecting whatever insecurity that they're experiencing, whatever scar we might have hit, whatever feeling comes up that they're projecting, that's all it is a projection of their own internal dialogue, their own internal feelings. And that projection often is onto us, but that doesn't mean that we should take it personally. And it doesn't mean that it actually has anything to do with us. So as personal as it may feel, as personal as they make us believe it to feel, it's just a projection. It's just a portrayal of whatever they're actually internally experiencing. And they might not even be aware of it. Whatever they're projecting, it might just be that they kind of want to place blame of whatever uncomfortable feeling or trigger that they're experiencing. They might want to place that blame onto someone else. And you might just be like the most convenient option, if that makes sense. So, of course, the immediate reaction when someone projects something onto us, maybe calls us a name or is just a little moody or rude to us, whatever, of course, we're going to take it personally because that's our immediate thought. We go, well, what did I do? Like, what did I ever do to you? Like, why are you doing or saying that to me? I'm a little confused here because we're thinking about ourselves. We're seeing the world through our eyes, through our perspective. Of course, we're going to internalize that. We're trying to protect our own psyche and our feelings. Okay, let's talk about an example. Let's say your partner, your significant other comes home and they're super moody and they kind of start picking a fight with you. And you're literally like, whoa, where did this come from? Like, what did I do? And you get upset because you're like, I didn't do anything to deserve this. Why is he doing or saying this? And then you find out later that they just had a really bad day at work. Or let's say a friend of yours suddenly stops replying to your texts out of the blue and like bails on your plans. And you immediately start taking it personally. Oh no, like, what did I do to upset them? They're clearly mad at me. Did I do something wrong? Right? We take it personally. We think it's about us. But then you later come to find out they're going through a lot. Something happened in their family and they need to just like take some time away. And maybe their way to cope with that is to just like get quiet and shut in a little bit. Or maybe friends of yours are doing something without you. Again, going back to that FOMO episode. And you see it, you get wind of it, and you're like, oh, what did I do to upset them? Like, how could they not invite me? Blah, blah, blah. And then you realize, oh no, they just were chatting and like made this plan and it had nothing to do with you, but you think because you weren't invited, you take it personally. You do internalize that and think, oh, maybe it's something that I did to upset them, or maybe, you know, they're kind of establishing this friendship and don't want me to be a part of it or whatever. The list can go on and on of what we choose to internalize. But at the end of the day, in all of these instances, what's happening is we choose to take things personally that truly aren't actually about us. And what it's doing is it's causing us unnecessary suffering because we're internalizing something to be offensive or hurtful when 99% of the time it actually has nothing to do with us, you know? So whether it be someone's having difficult feelings or going through something themselves, or choose to do something without actually even considering us at all, but for some reason we think that it was malicious towards us in some way. So first reason, most primary reason, we don't know what's going on through their head, and it's just a projection of whatever it is that they are feeling and experiencing, of whatever their perception, perspective on things is. That's about them, not about us. So moving on to the second reason why we really shouldn't take things personally. When we choose to take something personally, what we're doing is we're allowing whatever that person does or says to impact how we choose to feel about ourselves. We internalize that behavior or those words to suddenly impact our self-concept and our self-worth. So suddenly, okay, let's say someone does or says something that upsets us. Suddenly we feel worse about ourselves. When, as we just went over in the first point, it didn't have anything to do with us, but because we took it personally, we now feel worse about ourselves. So as long as we're taking things personally, we're allowing what others do or say to impact how we feel about ourselves and how we feel throughout the course of our day, which is so unstable and of course destined to leave us feeling emotionally high and low and emotionally unstable. Because think about all the things we can choose to take personally. Let's say someone bumps into you on the subway when things are crowded in rush hour. It's like, are you going to be upset for the next hour because a person accidentally bumped into you and really internalize that and take it personally? Or are you going to take it personally every time your manager is a little bit moody towards you or said something a bit short? And are you going to read into it for an hour and think you did something wrong? Or anytime your friend doesn't reply to a text, are you going to take it personally and spiral and think that they hate you? If you choose to internalize what others do or say because of their own internal projections and their own internal happenings, then we'll constantly question our self-worth and our self-concept. We're constantly going to be questioning our relationships, and we're going to be questioning how we feel about ourselves because we're going to be internalizing all of this behavior and starting to think that there's something wrong with us. Because the more we buy into the narratives and read into the things people do or say to mean something about us and our worth, the more we're going to feel like they're personal attacks rather than, as we again just discussed in number one, just being projections of their own internal insecurities and their own internal scars, which is exactly what it is. But the more we choose to let things go, the more we choose to not internalize and not take things personally, which we always can. We always have that choice. The sooner we free ourselves from allowing our self-worth and self-concept to be determined by other people. We're giving our power away when we decide to let other people determine how we feel about ourselves. But by not taking things personally and by having that detached perspective to recognize that whatever they're doing or saying is something that's going on within them and not about us, we're free from having to be offended and having to have hurt feelings from what that person does or says. Which again, I know coming back to the beginning of the episode is a lot easier said than done because we're also trained to feel badly when someone upsets us. From when we were young, of course, when someone calls us a name, it's going to really, really hurt us. But the whole point of this episode is we can feel good about ourselves and we can choose to feel happy and we can choose to let things go by not taking them personally. By recognizing that whatever they're doing or saying, whatever the situation presents, it's not actually about us. Again, no matter how much it seems like it might be about us, it's really not. And I do want to say too, this doesn't mean that we justify other people's behavior, right? Of course, if someone isn't treating you right, and if someone's being rude or hurtful towards you, see those true colors as they are. Don't ignore that. And don't simply constantly let that go and forgive if it's truly hurtful behavior. But what I am saying here is rather than justifying the behavior, we don't have to attach our self-worth to it. By recognizing that whatever they're doing or saying isn't actually about us, it doesn't mean we have to just go along with it and accept that behavior and constantly forgive. We can feel good about ourselves and detach from whatever the situation's presenting, right? We don't have to feel worse about ourselves and think that it is about us. Because when we see that it's not about us, we can see the behavior as it is, which maybe isn't good behavior, but knowing that we don't have to feel worse about ourselves. We don't have to attach our self-concept to however we're being treated or however we're being spoken to. So I do want to make that clear. It's not justifying behavior. It's removing our self-worth from other people's words and actions. And what this is doing is it's taking our own self-worth and self-concept into our own hands. We're the only ones that can impact how we feel about ourselves. It may seem like how other people treat us and how they talk to us is going to be the most impactful thing as to how we feel about ourselves. But the reality is when we remove the need to take things personally, when we set ourselves free from that, we realize they don't have any power. Whatever they do or say, we can simply be like, wow, they must be feeling a lot internally to have treated me that way or to have said that to me. Like they must be going through a lot. And I'm going to remove myself from that situation and just remind myself that's not about me. Let's distance from that situation. So another example of an instance that I was taking things personally for a while was when I first started the podcast, right? I would send it to close friends of mine. And I noticed that when I would do that, some of them would not even acknowledge it, or they wouldn't necessarily be outwardly supportive or really like bring it up. And I was taking it really personally at first. I was like thinking that they had a problem with me or a problem with the podcast. And with time and coming back to this reminder to not take things personally and honestly just fully understanding that everyone has their own lives to focus on. Everyone has their own problems and everyone is busy with work and their own relationships and their family and friends and their own pursuits. They aren't as consumed nearly as much with the podcast as I am, you know? So part of me wanted to take it personally and think like, oh, wow, it must be something with me that they're upset and that's why they haven't said anything or listened yet. But then I gained perspective and said, no, actually, it has nothing to do with me. They literally are just living their own lives, you know? And it can be the same thing like if a friend hasn't reached out, it's easy to spiral and take it personally and internalize and think, maybe I did something to hurt them and upset them. Maybe they don't like me anymore. But the reality is they're consumed in their own lives. And so we're assuming that it's about us when it's really not. And we really can't take that personally. Another personal instance in a previous relationship of mine that was definitely emotionally up and down. And we found ourselves in a lot of fights and arguments. And to me, they felt really out of the blue. And when my partner would get upset at me, he would point the finger at me and make me feel to blame for some things that I was like, I'm confused. I feel like I didn't do anything. And it really upset me. It was emotionally a lot. It made me question myself, what I was doing or not doing. And it was really confusing. Then starting to practice not taking things personally and recognizing that this behavior wasn't because of me at all. what he was doing and saying actually had nothing to do with me. As much as he was making it feel like it was about me, it really wasn't. What it was him projecting whatever he was internally feeling. And I see that with such clarity now. And again, it's really hard to see and have that perspective in the moment, but in retrospect, it so clearly wasn't about me. And having that perspective moving forward has saved me so much self-preservation and reminding myself when those things would happen to say, okay, that's actually not about me. I'm proud of the person I was in that instance. Not really sure what they're projecting, but I know that I still love myself and I'm proud of how I acted and stand by my values here. We can remove attaching our self-worth to that situation and know that whatever they are reacting about is something within them that they're projecting. And it was such a freeing feeling to not let his words or actions impact how I feel about myself. And I didn't have to let it destroy my day and be emotionally in turmoil the rest of the day because he was upset with me when I know that it wasn't actually about me. So again, want to preface, this isn't to justify behavior, especially if someone isn't being a good friend, a good partner, if someone's not showing up for you the way they should, or if someone is expressing themselves in a way that's hurtful or uncalled for. See that as it is. Don't ignore that, but don't take it personally. Don't internalize it to mean something about yourself. Don't feel less than or feel like you have to be bogged down by someone else's words or actions or lack of words and actions for the rest of the day or the rest of the week. It's so helpful to let it go by reminding yourself it's not actually about you. We don't have to let it impact how we feel about ourselves, and there's nothing wrong with you. We don't have to let that impact how we feel about ourselves. We can always choose what we choose to focus on. And our focus, where we put our energy and attention, determines how we feel about ourselves and about our lives. So again, remember, no matter how much it feels directly aimed at you, remember it's a projection, and remember that you can feel good about yourself and who you are and your choices, no matter how others might try to make you feel. Whatever they do or say actually doesn't have anything to do with you. So stop taking things personally and take your power and well-being back into your own hands. Thank you so much for showing up to today's episode. Really excited about this topic. Hope you guys liked it as well. Leave the show a rating or review if you liked this episode. Maybe send it to someone in your life who might need to hear this message. And I'll see you all again soon on your journeys to becoming more fulfilled.